Sounds better. Alright, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. So what advice would you give to somebody who has a friend or a family member that says that they're queer? Now, this happens a lot. Okay, I told you that I've, dealt with people who are going through these struggles in the dozens. But the number of people who call me and say, I have my nephew, my brother, my niece, my aunt, my uncle, what do I do in this situation? It's over 100, for sure. So, what do you do? Well, the first thing, if somebody tells you that, they say, I'm gay, I'm trans, I'm queer, it could mean two potential things. And you need to clarify. It could mean that they're feeling same gender attraction or they're feeling gender dysphoria and they're struggling with it. Or it could mean that they've decided to act on their desires and they don't care what Islam says and they don't care what Allah thinks and they're going to go ahead and embrace this as their identity. So you need to clearly ask them and say, which category are you in? Are you someone who's experiencing the desires and you want to know what to do? Or are you someone who says, this is who I am and I'm going to do whatever I feel like doing and you need to accept me and not have any problem when I come to your wedding completely cross-dressed in high heels and all of that stuff? Or when I come with my a sister, I'm coming with my girlfriend, and I'm going to come to your, aqiqah for your baby or something like that, and you need to accept this and not even look at me or anything, you need to support what I'm doing. Figure out which category they're in. If they're in the first category, you sympathize with them. You help them. So here, category number one, you sympathize with them, because people are going through difficulty. If it's the second category, you're not sympathizing with them. So when they come and they tell you that this is what I'm feeling, or if somebody says, I'm gay, it could mean two things. It could mean I have same gender attraction. It could mean that I already have a boyfriend and a girlfriend. I'm living this lifestyle and I don't care what you have to say. And you need to accept me if you're a true friend, and you need to be my ally if you're really my family member. And if not, then you're a hateful, horrible person. So figure out which one it is. Sympathize with number one. Number two, make dua for them. Educate them. Try whatever you can do. You figure out what tactic you're going to do to help this person to stop sinning and come back to Allah. So, it's like having a girlfriend, right? Or a boyfriend. If your child, may Allah protect all of our children. But if your child comes and says, I'm in a haram relationship. Of course, they're not going to use the word haram, but they're in a haram relationship. What is your goal as a parent or as a friend? You'd be like, okay, what is the right approach to this person of how I could bring them coming back to the message of Islam? There's a difference between someone confessing to you and somebody getting caught. So let's say somebody comes and tells you this is what happened, versus somebody got caught and you saw them holding hands with someone of the same gender or even opposite gender, whatever it may be. And what you got to realize is when somebody is in love with another person, if a boy's in love with another girl, or if a boy's in love with another boy, oftentimes it precludes them from wanting to get help. So it's going to take a long time. The same way that I have families come to me all the time and say, you know what, my child, they're in high school right now and they're in love with this other person, and they're not even Muslim, and this is not going to be good for the family, and it's not good for them, and what do I do? How can I fix this? You can't fix it in one counseling session. These feelings built up over years. There's probably some issues going on in the family or whatever else. There's some depression, whatever else is happening. It's going to take a long time to fix, and every approach is going to be different depending on the situation. But if someone's in love with another person, or if someone is in love with the idea of being able to change their gender, because it becomes like a type of fetish and people fantasize about it. And one of the characteristics of people with gender dysphoria is the amount of time that they spend online on websites thinking about what it's going to be like if they switch over their gender. This is like the number one common behavior among people who end up getting any type of surgery done. So you have to figure out what's going to happen, and that's the advice that I would give to family members and things like that. Number two, how should we interact with co-workers or friends who are queer? Well, first of all, you don't have to act weird. right? If somebody's beliefs are not negatively influencing you, and their actions are not negatively influencing you, you don't need to act like kind of strange around them. You know, so somebody walks in, they're coming next to you, and you know that they happen to be gay. And what are you gonna do? You'd be like, oh my God, astaghfirullah, they're coming near me, and you're like, you gotta move your table or move your desk away or something like that. You don't have to, because you know what? People do a lot of strange things. People do a lot of immoral things that are against Allah's teachings. And you don't, as long as it's not gonna negatively influence you, whatever they're doing, you don't have to necessarily modify your behavior. You don't have to pressure somebody else in that environment per se. You can explain, this is what Islam teaches when the time comes. Maybe it's not the first thing you talk to them about. Have you talked to them about Tawheed? Have you talked to them about believing in one Allah? Have you talked to them about the Prophet? Have you talked to them about the Quran and all that stuff? But then you don't need to sit there and be like acting all strange or acting a little bit, weird or something like that. But someone will come and say, well, wait a minute, isn't it a little bit stranger because that same gender attraction or that wanting to be a different gender, isn't that stranger than someone who's just committing adultery or fornication or something like that? And the answer is yes, it is different. It's different if you meet someone who's drinking alcohol, which is prohibited, and someone is drinking urine, which is prohibited. And you're going to be like, whoa, wait a minute, like this is, they're both haram. They're in the same category. One of them is viewed with a level of strangeness and disgust and having a weird feeling, versus the other one, they're both in the same category. But yes, you have that feeling is normal, that feeling is natural, and there's nothing wrong with having that intrinsic disgust that's there. But to what extent do you need to change your behavior completely? Not necessarily to a massive extent. Then the question is, I get this from every youth group I talk to. And unfortunately, this has become like my topic. This is like my 50th lecture on this topic of LGBT. Honestly, I'm tired of speaking about it, but it's needed. Everywhere I go, they say it's needed. So, every youth group I go to, the number one question that's asked is, can I have a friend who's queer? Right? And when they ask that, you know what it means, right? It means they already have a friend that's queer. And they're asking, can I keep that friend who's queer? And it comes back down to, it's like saying, can I have a friend who's a drug dealer? Can I have a friend who's a prostitute or a gigolo? Okay, you want the technical answer? Yeah, you can be friendly with anybody. Right? But what kind of people do you want to hang around with? The Prophet, peace be upon him, he said, الرَّجُلُ عَلَى دِينِ خَلِيلِهِ. A person is on the religion, on the way of life of their best friend. فَلْيَنْظُرْ أَحَدُكُمْ مَنْ يُخَالِلْ. So be very careful whom you take as your close friend. So when people ask, am I allowed to? Is it halal? Is it haram for me to be friendly with somebody at school who happens to be engaging in this type of behavior? Our scholars always taught us, my shuyukh, my teachers, they're specialists, muftis, they're part of European Fatwa Council and so many. They used to teach us, they said, not every answer is a fiqh answer. If somebody asks you, is it haram to do this? You don't necessarily give them a yes or no. Even if you say yes or no, it could be the wrong answer. It could be the wrong answer for that person. There's a story of Abdullah ibn Abbas. Somebody came to him and said, this is one of the senior companions, knowledgeable, one of the most knowledgeable of the companions, a scholar of the companions. Somebody came to him and said, if somebody commits murder and they ask Allah genuinely to forgive them, sincerely make tawbah, can Allah forgive them? He said no. And the students were shocked. They're like, wait a minute. You are teaching us that Allah can forgive any sins. If people ask tawbah, they make tawbah, they ask Allah for forgiveness. The answer, how can you say no? He said, I could see murder in this guy's eyes. He was asking the question because he's about to go and kill somebody. And he wants the green light and saying, if somebody wants to kill somebody else, and if they ask for forgiveness, can they get forgiveness? And if I said yes, of course Allah can forgive any sin, that person's dead. Right? So this is what happens when young people come and they ask me, can I have a friend that happens to be gay or bi or trans or non-binary or omni-gender. That's a gender, by the way. There's 107 genders as of 2023 listed in Wikipedia. And they put a little note there, by the way. Say, we reserve the right to add more. So there's genderless and there's omni-gender, which means no gender and all genders. And omni-gender, since there's 107, when they add more, omni-gender will encompass all the additions in the future. Which means the term doesn't have any meaning anymore. But anyway, that's a side note. We already covered the gender part. The point here is, be careful who you hang around with, number one. Number two, it depends on your personality. Brothers and sisters upstairs, people upstairs, sisters right there. Yes, I know something's funny. Something must be really, really funny, but you gotta hold it in. It's like the other people who have feelings, they gotta control those feelings, right? You gotta control these feelings too. Okay? So, here, what was my train of thought? The what? It depends on your personality, thank you. Your personality plays a really big role. If you have a dominant personality and when you talk to other people, they're listening to you and you're influencing them greatly and they're quite quiet, introverted, and those are the type of friends you have a lot less to worry about than if you have someone else who's sitting there every day making da'wah to you, preaching to you, saying, you need to become an ally. Why does your religion teach this? There's a lot of hatred going on, and that person is like a trans LGBT activist, and they got the rainbow flags all over the place. They're going to influence you whether you like it or not. We are, as human beings, we naturally get influenced. So there's a higher danger in this, and there's still a danger in this. Be very, very careful of the type of friends that you choose to hang around. No one's going to be perfect, but you need to think about yourself, your personality, your level of Islamic knowledge, and what level of activism, LGBT activism, does this person have when they're speaking to you and when they're around other people. So be careful about that. And then the third question on this is, should I use pronouns? Right, so this is what happens. They do pronoun introductions. If you've never seen this before, you probably have in many cases. They do this everywhere. So they gather around, and when people say, everyone introduce yourself and one thing that you like in what city you live in. So that when you do gender pronoun introduction, you say, introduce yourself, say your name and your pronouns. So you're supposed to say, my name is John, he, him. And then someone else is going to say, my name is Sarah, she, her. And then they're going to come up with new pronouns like Z and tree and all sorts of other things. And you have to utilize the pronouns after they've introduced them. Muslims should, by default, never use pronouns for one reason, and one very simple reason. And that is because it's trying to normalize the idea that gender is relative and it's fluid and it has no meaning and you can just modify it. So it's going to normalize that behavior the more you talk about it. That's exactly why they do gender pronoun introductions. And this should never be happening in any masjid, ever. And it should not be happening in any Muslim group at all. And sadly, there are some Muslim student associations in the country where the Muslim students get together and they do the pronoun introduction. And one time, a group came to my home court, California Islamic University, when we had a building. And they came and sat down and said, Sheikh, can you introduce and start with the dua? I'm like, sure. And after we did the dua, I wasn't part of the gathering, but they're like, okay, we're going to start with introductions. So everyone just do pronoun introduction. So my name is Muhammad, he, him. My name is Fatima, she, her. And it comes to me. And I'm like, Mustafa Umar. And this is the only, I don't even use my title, but this time I said, Sheikh Mustafa Umar. Period. That's it. If you can't figure out that Mustafa is male, that's your problem, it's not my problem. And don't make your problem my problem. So the default should be, there are no gender introductions when you have home court advantage for sure. Now you're stuck at work. You're being pressured by your company. So you're a teacher at school. Someone has identified as any gender that they've invented for themselves, because you're allowed to invent genders. So what do? And it's, in kindergarten, you're allowed to invent genders. In fact, some children are identifying as animals, right? And there was a girl who identified as a cat in America, and she wanted a litter box to be installed into the bathroom in public school. And the parents said, hey, my daughter identifies as a cat, and she doesn't want to use a toilet. A litter box needs to be put in there. And this case was actually like serious. It was going to go to court. So this is what, the insanity that we're living in. But if you're pressured and there's no other way to avoid it, one way you can avoid it is just keep calling the person by their name. But then their name is already identified differently. So the person was John and became Sarah. So you're like, either way I'm stuck. I can't just keep calling him John because they've already changed their name. And now we have to address their pronoun. You try to find the best way you can creatively somehow avoid using it. And if you can't, you do your best. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows. But when you walk out of that environment, and you're with your friends, and you're with your family, and you're with everyone else, you use what their biological gender is going to be. Because if you don't, then your kids are listening. And your grandkids are listening. And when you start to normalize that language, they start to become confused and say, why is grandma and mom and dad, and they're calling this person whatever it is, and now they're accepting it. So you should try to avoid gender pronouns as much as possible. What advice do I have for Islamic institutions like masjids who have queer people attending? Well, the general policy of masjid should be, we should welcome all people. And the general policy should be, don't ask, don't tell. You got a tattoo under your arm or something like that, it's not my problem. You cover it up, you come in the masjid, you pray, alhamdulillah, whatever it is, doesn't make any difference. So as long as something remains a private issue, don't try to make it into a public issue. Let people do whatever they want, whatever beliefs they have, let them come and pray in the masjid. That's the general policy. But when it becomes a public issue, that's where we as leaders in Muslim institutions need to say, hey, you have to respect the space, and the space has certain rules. So you can't walk into a masjid with like, all Muslims should drink alcohol t-shirt in there and be like, I'm praying like this is my form of protest. Now it's a public issue. Say, sorry, you need to go outside, you need to change your shirt, and this is not going to be acceptable. So the same thing's going to happen when it comes to somebody trying to engage in any type of forbidden activity inside the masjid that's Islamically just unacceptable Islamically. And this is where the problem is going to come. It's going to come when somebody comes and says, well, I identify as a different gender, and therefore I am a male, and I'm going to pray in the women's section. And we've had this at least 2 times in our masjid. We had to deal with it. And masjids around the country are dealing with this right now. So what are you supposed to do? Well, the default, you only have 2 options. If the person is intersex, they're khuntha mushkil, you have the option to pray in a separate row, right? Or they can pray with the one that they're actually generally assigned to. Or they have to pray with their biological gender / sex. Not much of differentiation in Islam. And that needs to be enforced. When it comes to bathrooms, would the sisters like it if one of these brothers re-identifies as a female and says, I'm going to go and make wudu in the women's bathroom? No. But they say, well, what about my feelings? The feelings of 0.01%, and you don't care about the 99.99% of people? That you're not allowed to be looking at a sister without her hijab and she's going to be making wudu and all that? So Muslim institutions and organizations, they need to make sure they're following Islamic guidelines, very clear cut. There's not going to ever be a rainbow flag in this masjid, inshallah. There's not going to be gender pronoun introductions. No cross-dressers, regardless of what hormones they're injecting in there, are going to be put in the wrong prayer rows or are going to be using a different bathroom or something like that. And what Muslim institutions need to do is they need to think about this from a legal perspective, because lawsuits are going to start. And I've been saying this for over 6 years. We met with the Orthodox Jewish community, and they have a lot of lawyers. Kind of a stereotype, right? A lot of Jewish lawyers. They actually have a lot of lawyers. And what happened was, after the Supreme Court ruling on gay marriage that took place several years ago, the Orthodox Union got together. And the Orthodox Union, if you eat like halal, if you're very strict on your halal food, you see like the little letter U with the circle around it, that's Orthodox Union. All those little halal with the little D for dairy and all that, it tells you if it has any animal products or something like that. So Orthodox Union met, and they say, how can we protect our synagogues from transgenderism in the future? This was a long time ago they met. And they had all their lawyers come together. And we had a lawyer from Pepperdine University, law professor, and consulted with other people. And we asked them all these questions. This was like 6 years ago. And their answer was, you can sue anyone for anything in America. But the best way and the only way to protect yourself is to come up with some type of membership protocol that can override a court saying that even our bathrooms and our prayer spaces are for members only, but you don't necessarily enforce it, but you have it in writing, and you make a symbolic token type of membership, because this is going to happen where you're going to have people renting out a multi-purpose room in a masjid, and they're going to say, we're renting out for a wedding, and all of a sudden, guess what? Gay couple is getting married over there. So your imam is not performing the marriage, but they've already rented out the space. On what basis do you reject that? So from a law perspective, we need to really, we're still very behind. The Baptist Church wrote a 40-page handbook 5 years ago on how churches can protect themselves. We need to start developing that literature. The last thing is, when and how do you talk to your kids about the LGBT movement? I have a few stories, but I don't have time for the stories. Preschool and kindergarten books are now in libraries, which basically teach children about this stuff at the age of 4 and 5. One of the books, it has a red crayon wrapped in a blue wrapper. And the story is about the red crayon thought it was a blue crayon the whole time. And only later on in life it realized it's been in the wrong wrapper the whole time. And it realized that on the inside it was actually a red crayon. It finally shed the wrapper and put on the correct color. You can understand exactly where it's going. And then at the end of the book, some of these say, you should try to invent your own pronoun. You can be anything you want. You could be male, you could be female, you could be all, you could be neither. You can invent any pronoun you want. Why don't you try it? And there's exercises at the end of a book for 5-year-olds. For 5-year-olds. So the question is, what age should we talk to our kids about this stuff? Age appropriate way. I started teaching the story of Prophet Lut to my kids when they were 4. And people said, you're crazy. You're crazy. I had people in my family say, something is wrong with you. I don't know what you studied in your madrasas or whatever, but this guy's crazy. But now, it's very understandable why. Because they're going to be exposed to it no matter what you try to do. And not only are there books that are targeting them, in public school they're targeting them, and they are targeting the Muslims. So there's a book called I'm Muslim and My Gender Doesn't Fit Me, a resource for trans Muslim youth. And what do they write in? This is published by organizations and handed out in public schools. They have Arabic, this is right here in Orange County, Arabic translation, Pashto translation, Farsi translation. They've translated in all the languages where the Muslim immigrants are here. And what do they write? Being trans is not haram. It's natural. It dates back to the time of the Prophet, peace be upon him. Allah loves you no matter what. And then they bring verses, they bring hadiths, and this is part of the curriculum that's there. So the counselors in the public schools in Orange County, which is more conservative than the rest of California, have this as a resource given to them, prepared professionally with drawings and images and everything, and they show mom, dad with the beard and with like a half hijab on or a full hijab on or whatever, hugging them and saying, we're accepting you. That's what's happening. That's what's been happening for the last 5 years. In case you didn't know what was happening, that's why we're doing this, so that you understand what's taking place. How do you talk to people of different ages? Well, it's different. Ages 4 to 8, you can explain things in one way. Ages 8 to 12, you're going to explain things in another way. Ages 13 and up, you're going to explain things in a different way. And what you should do is you should go through scenarios. Think about what would you do. If you walk by and all of a sudden, you go to Target, and there's a rainbow colored collection, which is there, designed by a Satanist. I double checked it, ironically. But you go there, and your daughter comes and says, Mom, I want to buy this t-shirt. And it's a rainbow heart on the t-shirt, like the heart that's broken on our flyer. It's not broken though, it's the heart t-shirt. And it's June. You say, Mom, I really want to buy this. What are you going to say? Are you going to say, no, we don't do that, it's haram? Say, but why? You have to have good responses. You need to, number one, educate them before they encounter this. And number two, when you encounter it, you have to come up with a good response. So there's a fantastic book, a manual that just came out. It's on a website called dearmuslimkids.com. It's called Sticky Situations and How to Deal with It. It's a full parental guide, 40-page handbook, few videos and everything. And here's my ask. My ask is, I want the Muslim community to understand that the 3 speakers that are here today, we can't independently solve this problem in the Muslim community. If you're gonna, I know exactly what's gonna happen. I know my community. They're gonna say, Sheikh Mustafa, we love the presentation. It was so great. Can you please get that manual and can you do a whole weekend seminar to teach all of our kids exactly this issue age by age and group by group? And the answer is, I would love to, but I'm working on 100 projects. And I'm not the only parent. I'm not the only one who can teach this stuff. There's a manual that's there. It's been designed very well. We have so many teachers in the community. One of you can step up. 10 of you can step up and say, hey, I'll teach. I have experience. I can do this. And they say, well, legally, we have to protect the masjid. Sheikh Mustafa, Sheikh Haifa, can you solve this problem? Can you find all the lawyers and get this done? My response is, can you guys help find this and get it done? The whole community needs to resolve this. You don't just push it on one or two people, because if it comes to me, I'm going to put on Brother Amin. And Brother Amin's going to be like, I don't got time for this. I got so many other things on my plate. And guess what? It's just going to be a few people. They're overwhelmed. And then they're like, I can't do any of this anymore. The community needs to get involved. They need to do something. They need to put forward and say, don't just say, I have an idea. Because everyone has great ideas. But who's going to execute the idea? When you come and you say, I have an idea. We should do this. I say, good. How can you play a role in helping to do this? If you're a teacher, if you're a lawyer, if you're a counselor, you're a therapist, and you're like, I want to go and get some education about this SIT method of Dr. Yarhouse. Where can I get more information? I want to specialize in this. I want to be able to help people. We can guide you towards those resources. But if you're hoping that we're going to solve all these problems by ourselves independently or something like that, then you're going to have to be, don't hold your breath. So as a community, we can do this. And I'll just end on a positive note, even though I've gone over time. The positive note is, this year, the last 2 or 3 months, I've seen the Muslim community rally on this issue like never before. Some people have criticized very popular Muslim scholars and said, where are they? Why aren't they being more open? Why aren't they saying something? And whatever their reasons were, they're all saying something now. Everyone's saying something. Everyone is speaking. Everyone has all of a sudden become courageous. So courageous that I have people calling me from the Jewish and the Christian community saying, you guys are our role models. The Muslim community across the country in North America, they are the role models, and the Muslim kids who are standing up and they got recorded by their teachers, the teachers yelling at them, they're the role models for other people. This is amazing. So keep up the good work, keep up the momentum,